bunch of questions.
Yes. All right. So we are live. Wise Talk Mastermind. So as we see, waiting on another person or two, but yeah, I got Mr. George Gammon joining us. So looking forward to going back and forth and getting your thoughts on a variety of subject matter. I saw your tweet earlier about the REITs and how looks like every financial product that's been spun out, everyone's looking to get out of them. So we can touch on that. But Mr. George Gammon, how you doing, boss?
I'm doing real well. Considering.
Yeah.
I've got my health, so that's great. I've been quarantined in Medellin, Colombia. You know where I live. You visited me a few weeks ago, but I haven't been out of the apartment in a week. Literally, have not stepped foot out of the apartment. Mm-hmm. I think they're allowing you to go to one person per household is allowed to go to the grocery store once per day, either the grocery store or the pharmacy. But then from call it 7 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning, it's just government mandated lockdown. I mean, they've got the helicopters. You can hear them going over making announcements. Stay in your house for the health of your family. Stay in your house. It's like proper Orwell stuff. And then you got cop cars driving by doing the same thing. So for people like you and I and a lot of the people that are on Wise Talk who are concerned about personal liberties and a potential nanny state and Big Brother, it's one thing to sit there and talk about it on videos, but it's another thing to see it just bam right there. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have a helicopter go over and make announcements, but you're just kind of seeing it. It becomes much more real when it's like that. And then you see what it could be in the future if it wasn't the cerveza sickness or the pandemic, and it was just more the government trying to be more and more controlling, of course, for your security. That's how it's always sold, whether it's 9/11 or whether it's banning of cash, or they're never going to come out and say, Mike, we need to ban your cash, so just fork it over. They're going to say, we need to ban your cash because it's for your safety. It's for your children's safety. We need to wipe out the drug dealers and the terrorists, and it's contaminated with the virus. So we need to do all these things.
Don't forget tax evasion. That's going to be a real big one because of this new extended window of taxing, whatever. So anything they're going to come out with all types of stuff, man.
Yeah, there's so many things that are up in the air. I mean, you mentioned taxes. That's a great point. But I've had emails going back and forth because I'm in the real estate business. That's what I do outside of YouTube. Believe it or not, YouTube's just a hobby for me. But the main stuff in retirement for me is just real estate investing. So I go back and forth with a lot of people, investors, and they're like, okay, if my tenants aren't paying the rent, and that's kind of a government mandate. I'm not sure that it is, but if it comes to that, then am I liable to pay my mortgage, or can I put that on forbearance? Can I kind of put it on a freeze, or then is there an ethical issue? Like for me personally, I've got a great relationship with the community bank I use in Kansas City. And it's not a big Wells Fargo or a bank that I would consider as like a government bank, which that's kind of the big banks. That's how I see them. But I know the people well. So I'm even if I could not pay my I'm not going to do that just for ethical reasons. That's just my decision. I'm not saying that if you choose to do that, it's not a morally correct decision or a financially correct decision. I'm just saying for me personally, I'm going to continue to pay the mortgage there. And fortunately, I'm in a position where I can pay the mortgage even if I don't have renters paying the rent. But my point is it creates all of these really weird types of scenarios and questions that I don't think number one, we haven't experienced in the past. Number two, I think there's going to be a lot more just on a daily basis and a weekly basis, a lot more of these weird questions that we have to answer and really make decisions on that could heavily impact our financial futures and the future of our family.
Yeah, I do agree. And so we do have Trader Steph joining us. Trader Steph, how are you doing?
I'm having lunch, my soup with North Carolina Reapers in it. It's really hot. I'm like sweating bullets.
North Carolina Reapers.
I'm like,
you got a new thumbnail.
Got to clear my throat. Oh, I love these things.
Yeah.
You got a new thumbnail, Steph.
Right. So I used a different picture there because I came across that on Twitter and was like, yeah, perfect. Coin shop's got a sign up in Nebraska. Now trading in gold, silver, and toilet paper.
Really?
It's a barterable item. Forget cigarettes and the chocolate, toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right. Most people never really gave it any thought,
Yeah.
But it's true. And it's those things that you use every day that are necessary. I mean, really, do you want to use the leaves out? I mean, if you live somewhere where there's a forest, right? What are you going to use to wipe your butt? Yeah, toilet paper, of course. Sorry to bring up the toilet paper thing, but I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, but it is funny though, isn't it? I mean, we always talk about you got to have the bullets and the whiskey's going to be tradable, and sure enough, even us, even the tinfoil hatters, never thought of the toilet paper.
Well, you got to find some humor.
Yeah.
It's comic tragedy, and I don't think that's the appropriate term. But when you were involved, if you were involved in theater or the arts. Tragic comedy, that's what it's called. That's what we're giving a little bit here today because we need to lighten up a little bit despite the doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
But, I'm going to rain on that parade just for a moment. And I put out a tweet the other day because, just kind of cut through. There's so much to talk about, right? And at one level, it needs to be talked about. But on the other level, I'm thinking this. I said, look, plain English, COVID-19 talk. It wants to kill you. So it can live. It reinvents itself to outsmart you. It does not care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your opinions. And it doesn't care about your science. A cute little virus wearing Nikes made in China with a MAGA hat is not going to show up and politely ring your doorbell first.
Right.
Despite the arguments we have about the Constitution and all that, this is reality right now. That's what we're dealing with. And there's going to be unrest, and a lot of people are going to die. And it's going to take some time to play out. But on George's thoughts, I just want to say one thing. Global currency reset phase has started. But this whole pandemic, however you want to call it, time frame, I don't think anybody can. When things finally start to settle down, with us blowing this debt bubble so much bigger because we really don't have a choice on many levels. I had a conversation with a small business owner who had to let all their people go, and some of them were subcontractors and they were employees, and there was this a pride issue. Well, I've never asked for anything from the government, and I'm not going to take it this time. And I've never done that either. I know that. I get it. I understand. And I said, well, sometimes you need to swallow your pride, maybe. And then on the other hand, I want you to call the IRS today or the Treasury Department, and I want you to tell them, here's my social. Don't send me that check next month that's coming. I don't want it. Just take it because none of it's going to matter because there will be a debt jubilee and there's going to be a global currency reset. And how that's going to play out exactly, I don't think anybody can determine. This is unprecedented. It's, New York is about to be quarantined.
New Jersey and Connecticut.
That's right. They're all the tri-state area. No doubt.
Hey, Steph. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Just when you get done, I've got a question for you.
Go ahead. Whatever. Let me put my sleep to the side before I melt.
One thing I've been trying to mull over the last couple of days is, from what I can see, and I know you have researched this a ton, you've got two options as far as the virus. Either you get up to herd immunity or you get a vaccine. And I don't know that people realize that even if we quarantine, even if we do as much social distancing and face masks, even if we do all that, it's still going to continue to spread. Now, granted, at a slower pace, and that's much, much better, but it's still going to work its way through the entire society until that herd immunity is hit or we get a vaccine. So what's that? If it's an R0 value of, call it 3, based on my just back of the napkin math, I'm seeing 190 million Americans would have to be infected in order for us to get to the herd immunity. And let's just say that we were able to extinguish it completely in the United States, which you can't, but let's just say you could. But then you've got flights coming in from other areas. You've got people driving in from Mexico, Canada. You completely shut off the borders. But I think the original question is, am I seeing that right? Where we've only got really two options, and that's to get to herd immunity or to find a vaccine. And then one other caveat to that is would it be if you could just wave a magic wand, and I know we're dealing with real people, so it's probably not possible, but if you could just wave the magic wand, and if let's just say that the population of younger people, let's say under 55, were completely immune to this, and I know they're not, but let's just say that they were, and the people that really had an issue were 55 and older, would it be the best move, assuming that at least 60% of the population was that younger subset, to quarantine the 55 and older, allow the younger people under 55 to just be the sacrificial lamb, just because we know it's really not going to affect them too much? And again, this is a hypothetical. So they go out there, start driving the Ubers, go to the Starbucks, they do, they're on with their daily lives until 100% of them get it. Then you let everyone out of the house and we're at herd immunity. And then you've allowed it to run its course through society with doing the least amount of damage from an economic standpoint and a health standpoint.
Phew. Wait a minute. Let me think about that. Holy cow. No, I hear where you're coming from, because, I've read a few missives about it, about the herd immunity thing, and just let everyone catch it. Let me throw this out there, so as not to belabor some of the obvious things, because there's so much to be said. 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, there were pandemics, plagues, pestilence, and through history. The only thing we can compare this to right now is 1918. And they didn't have the option that we have. They would be doing exactly what you're proposing. Not proposing, but you get what I'm saying, right? That's how it was resolved, and we're still here. So I think it's a moral question. If you just eliminate the economic question, because we're all going to catch it eventually. I mean, that's just how viruses work. That's how the planet works. It's round. No one is going to create some imaginary boundary, like, Walmart's putting up plastic things between them and the cash registers. I mean, I get it. It eliminates the possibility of someone sneezing and blowing their water all over you. But in reality, if someone did sneeze there and you had the kind of light that you could just, flash on and see where the cloud of those droplets are, it goes over and around the plastic. There's no way to get away from this. Vaccines won't solve it. And the influenza seasonality is just a case in point, because even though you have a vaccine, they're only 10% effective, because the virus will mutate. It wants to live. It wants to survive. If it gets into another host, it's done. It's going to do it. So I don't really see the argument to begin with on one level. And the economy would get hit no matter what we did, because in relation to this, the question was posed to me, well, we're going to have a vaccine, and I can't believe this is happening in the modern age with all of our science. And I'm like, well, that's what prompted me to write that tweet, because look, we're right back where we were in 1918 after all these advances. It's the same problem, but it's actually kind of worse, because back then we didn't have jets flying around the world.
Yeah, right.
Right. This is spreading much faster on top of a very virulent strain. I mean, just connect the dots. So I don't think we need to do anything. It's going to happen anyway. But then we're going to suffer the consequences because of, trying to stop the spread is kind of counterproductive. But at the same time, morally, I understand it. But it's too late. It's been running around seeding since at least early January at a minimum. We're going on with 3 months. January, 3 months.
Watch this. We're talking about feedback. A vaccine. Is there a possibility for a cure, or the only thing that can be suggested and brought into existence is a vaccine to make us immune from it? Is there a way to kill it?
I would bring up my father's death with this. And just because it's kind of personally for me is not making my point of view biased.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make that clear. But he was 80, I think, when it started. And over a period of a year, he had both of his legs amputated. He was a 45-year veteran. He delivered mail. I mean, the guy was a horse. His legs were amazing. We couldn't believe what was happening. But in that process, he survived. But at the second amputation, he got infected with MRSA. So to your point, there's not going to be a cure, because the viruses and the bacteria are a lot smarter than us. And that's just how Mother Nature works. So case in point, a recent article came out. I was suggesting that the bioweapon thing, I mean, all right. I said, you know what? If someone could have been infected outside of that wet market, I think they called them, a month before, 2 months before, it doesn't matter. And it was slowly, kind of stealthily passing through people. And it just took one person to go to the wet market because it was local. And that person had a low immune system, whatever. And a news article came out in the New York Post that there's this 57-year-old woman, I think. Don't hold me to the details. They identified her, and she went to get tested. It came back negative. She went back to the hospital twice. In the meantime, she's working at the market. That market was like the petri dish. Just her being there and being infected, it was the perfect environment for a blow up to occur and a super spreader and a cluster to form, and boom, that was it. At that point, they couldn't control it. It was those patients that ended up in the hospital that physician tried to blow the whistle for, who eventually died from getting infected himself. So I don't think there's a cure, or will be. I think there will be therapeutics that will dampen the result of the effect that everyone's an individual, but how it affects you, they're dampen the however it's hurting you or killing you, and bring down fever, whatever, will save some lives. But outright cure,
I think it's very similar to the flu, Mike, or the cold. That you like the cold, or to Steph's point earlier, the flu. You get a flu shot, and it. I'm getting feedback. Is that me, Mike? Oh, there we go. There we go. Now it's better. Okay. Anyway, so it's like the flu in the sense that you get your flu shot and it vaccinates you for a couple strains, but during the summer, it generally mutates. And when it comes back, a little bit different. So even though you get that flu shot, you're still susceptible to getting it. I think something like that. And then hopefully, and again, to be clear, if you exclude a certain segment of our population, and if the numbers play out over the long run, like we're kind of seeing the preliminary numbers, and let's just say there's a subset of the population that's more at risk, excluding them, the whole problem with this could be solved with additional capacity in the hospital system. And again, to be very, very clear, I'm saying if the numbers are similar to the flu when all this is said and done, which I don't think they will be. And when I mean the numbers, I mean the case fatality rate and the serious complication rate. That's what's really important for overwhelming the hospital system. Most people haven't done the numbers, because even if it is the flu, or even if it is similar to the flu as far as the case fatality rate, you've still got a huge problem, because let's say 190 million people get it, and it's got a 1% serious complication rate like the flu. That still requires 1.9 million hospital beds, of which we have 90,000. So there you see a really steep growth curve on the CFR. Yeah. But I think hopefully it'll just be in 2 years or whenever it's kind of more in the rearview mirror, it'll be more like the flu, where you just get vaccinated. We have additional hospital capacity, and maybe people are a little more careful. I mean, whenever I go to Asia, I've traveled all around. Mike, I know you have as well. Most people are wearing masks and whatnot, especially when they're on flights or in the airport or in really congested areas. So maybe that's the way the United States and the Western world looks on a moving forward basis. And an adjustment period, I guess.
Now, I want to bring to your attention this John Hopkins medical update of the numbers, and I find it very suspicious. And it's some rigged information, because how did the original health scare originate in China? But 81,000 has been the number for quite some time now, and all of a sudden we surpassed them and probably going to lead the charge. And I don't think there's any pushback on the fraudulent numbers that we have with John Hopkins, who's leading the charge on calculating this. Does it really bother anybody that I believe this is the part of the setup for them being able to take over after all this blows through? Because if we end up having 200,000 infected and they still stuck at 81, wouldn't somebody think that's something's wrong with that?
I think everyone just assumes the Chinese numbers are completely wrong and just ignores them.
Yeah, you have to ignore them. Don't even discuss them. It's a Trojan horse argument.
Right. Okay. But watch this. But John Hopkins is this website here is probably leading the world as the source of information, and so they clearly have to. I mean, so I would imagine that there should be some type of pushback or try to get some type of better numbers than this, because it really makes the U.S. look like we started the damn problem type of thing.
I think they're at the mercy of the
data.
Understanding your question, I think they're at the mercy of the countries announcing their number. They're just aggregating the data. I don't think they've got boots on the ground.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are actually their numbers. I think it's just, what did China report? Great. Let me just go ahead and input that into our John Hopkins website.
You see those footnotes down there? It says it right there. It's an aggregator. It's no different than Google, so to speak. So just for the sake of doing a CFR, remember, CFR is going to shift over time, because that total confirmed, no matter where they're coming from, is going to rise. It'll peak at some point and then begin to fall. So with just that in mind, you can't use it for a CFR because it's fluctuating. So, but you'll notice, just as an example, if you go to China, just go ahead and go to the individual China number.
Yeah, click on it, Mike. Click on it. Yeah.
Scroll up. Yeah, there you go.
I'm sitting there pointing at it like you can see my finger.
So scroll up on that left-hand bar.
Left-hand bar.
Yeah, on this where it's got the end. Right. Yeah. Or actually, just reload the whole page from scratch to make sure we're getting the right numbers here. Just do a refresh. And then the numbers, there's a lag time with the aggregator too. Sometimes there's stuff coming in and then it's kind of like zero. So things get kind of weird. So if we look at right there.
Look at the growth curve.
Yeah, here's an example where there's an issue right now between the total confirmed, because that's saying China, and the over on the total deaths and the total recovered. You should be able to add the total deaths and the total recovered, and that will equal the total confirmed. The reason that it doesn't is because people in the confirmed category are still moving over to the total deaths in the confirmed. So remember, they're separating the deaths from total recovered just for the sake of separating them, so that you know the difference. But deaths are actually part of the total recovered. Don't take the word literally. It should say resolved. Yeah. And it depends on what source you're looking at. So they are resolved cases. And some people recovered. Some people came out on a gurney, and not all of them were hospitalized. And then there's this whole population that was never tested. Let's just not go there. Let's just go with the numbers we have. Let's do that math. So that should be world. Let's do the worldwide number just for fun. So you'll have to refresh and have it at the big number up there.
So another issue is that looking at if Wuhan is the original, the original location of this issue that we're having here, they're not even Wuhan is not even on the damn thing.
Right. So let's look at this. So we're looking at the totals. You got to add those two columns together. Let's add the deaths. That's 3,249 plus 137,283. Somebody write this number down for me, or hold it in your head.
167. 5. 532.
Okay, somebody remember that number for me.
Yes, sir. I got you.
All right, so now I'm going to take 3249. Now, what's that big number? I'm going to divide that big number into it. What is it?
167,532.
Okay, that gives me a fraction, and then you multiply that by 100 to give you, something that you understand.
Mm-hmm.
The CFR rate, as it stands right now, it's going to change is 18%. If you trusted all these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't trust the numbers, that 18% could be higher, it could be lower, and every country is going to be different because everybody's at a different stage. And until all the confirmed cases eventually end up dropping into their bucket on the right side columns, which is why they break them down this way, then we'll know what the final CFR is. My guess, it's going to be just like the 1918 pandemic. But worse because of airplanes in modern world, and more people, it happens faster, which is why the hospitals are overwhelmed quicker, versus influenza, and not as many people get pneumonia or double pneumonia from the flu, but it happens with this really quick, and then you get overwhelmed. But eventually, there's going to be a median where that CFR is going to kind of come down to reality of what the number should be, because some countries start at like 100%. It's just where there'll be a beginning and then an end. It'll be between 10 and 20%.
So, now, Steph, when you've got the total deaths and total recovered, the difference between that and the 649, the people that are in limbo, those are just the people that are supposedly just ill right now. And
so they've been tested and they're confirmed that they have it. So all those numbers drop into the two buckets on the right side at some point, and we're not even close to that.
Yeah, that's a big delta.
Because you don't know what bucket they're going to fall in. If more fall into the death bucket versus just the recovered, that changes the CFR dynamic. That's why you can't use total.
Colombia, 608 cases reported thus far.
Yeah, but the thing is with Colombia, Mike, it's doubling like every 3 days.
Really? So it's
really not about the total cases. It's about how fast it's doubling. And that's why when you click on it and see the growth curve on the right, Mike, that's why that's so important. So click on the United States and look at the growth curve. It's staggering. Look at that. I mean, it's literally straight up. It's vertical.
Hey, I'm noticing a couple comments in the live feed. Just go to a virologist who's done this for like 40 some years.
Mm-hmm. Where's the live feed?
Talk to them about the math. I'm just passing on the information. This is not my opinion. I'm just telling you how it's done behind the scenes. They knew this back in January. The problem is the United States never got the sequences from China until January, when they had them in mid-December. So we were behind the curve on so many levels. There's a lot of blame to be thrown around here.
Now, let me ask you a question. Recently, in the alternative media space, a Jewish doctor in some area in New York mentioned that he's been able to treat some of his patients with hydrochlorophyll and Z-Packs or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's proven to be successful in helping slow down the lung issue that people are having. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think the Nevada governor said that, he will ban any type of malaria medications or experimentation on his citizens. So what do you guys think about that?
You just have to be careful with that stuff. You got to make sure you're dealing with a competent doctor, because I know I've read reports in Arizona where I spend a lot of time. I have a lot of friends where some older people there, they get hyper paranoid and freak out about the virus. And then they read something like that. They go out and buy it and just, shotgun it, and it kills them in a half hour because it doesn't work well with other type of medication they're on. Or they actually end up killing themselves trying to prevent from getting the virus. So I've heard that does work well, but just understand if you're thinking about, I wouldn't do that on your own. That's the bottom line. Make sure you're getting a real competent doctor that prescribes it to you and tells you how to take it to make sure that you're not putting yourself in danger.
Yeah. Did you guys hear about, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steph.
What I did for myself, and I recommended in my second article, because, I started writing about this on the 21st of January, which, there's some weird thing going on, but it was January 20th that when the states are given when the administration grants them an emergency declaration, for FEMA and stuff, the date, you have to have a date where it started. And then the ending date, it's open until they don't need the help anymore. But the opening date for every state, they're using January 20th. But in the second article I wrote, I suggested oregano oil. And I'm not telling everyone to run out and buy oregano oil. This is not a doctor's recommendation. I'm just telling you what works. It helped my dad initially. But the reason is, and we're not talking about like oil you can buy at the point of purchase display at your health food store to make things smell nice. Now, you have to have pharmaceutical grade oregano oil, and it needs to have a carvacol count of 86% because it's antiviral, antifungal, and antibacterial, and it works. And I haven't been sick for a very, very long time. And I can just, from people that I know, any women out there in the audience, they're in a cup right out in the chat. If you ever had a yeast issue, oregano oil, you never have to worry about seeing your gynecologist again. It's not like you put oil on your skin. No, you don't do that. But in any event, oregano oil is great. And raw garlic, if you can deal with eating raw garlic, the real thing, that's good too. It's helpful. And I think the bottom line here is there's not a cure, but you need to strengthen your immune system. Right, George? Because if your immune system is compromised or weak to begin with for whatever reason, you're more vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and again, I'm not a doctor, but if I was just to use some common sense, I would assume that's why people over 70 or 80 really struggle with this, or people who are extremely obese, or people that have high blood pressure, diabetes, because their immune system might be a little weaker than someone. But that said, you read stories about how the guy's running marathons every single day, and 2 days later he drops dead because of the coronavirus. So it is a game of probabilities. I mean, those are outliers, of course. But again, but it's just like the overall numbers. There's so many unknowns. We don't know if it's going to be like the flu, to where you can build herd immunity. As an example, with the cold, you only build immunity for like 2 or 3 months.
Yep.
That's why you can get multiple colds per year. Where the flu, if you get a specific strain, you're pretty much good to go for that strain, or for a group of strains for like a year or so, or 8 months, 9 months. It fluctuates. So, and that's from what I've read. Again, I'm not a doctor, but so is the coronavirus, is it going to be more like the cold? Is it going to be more like the flu? Or let's all pray that it's something that if you get it once, then you're just good to go, and you're completely immune to it for the rest of your life. Maybe not. There's just so many unknowns. What's the case fatality rate? What's the R0 value? What's the serious complication rate? What is the capacity of our healthcare system? How fast can our healthcare system scale? How fast can the world healthcare system? It's just,
yeah. The key word is mutation, which everything else has to keep up with. So the virologist is always at the end of the table at the emergency meeting, waiting for everyone else to catch up.
Yeah. So Steph, one thing if you don't mind me changing the topic just a little bit, is what are your charts showing right now with all the stuff that we and everyone on the chat stream here, I'm sure, really cares about, and that would be gold, silver. I'm now really interested in oil. I had a long conversation with just a brilliant fund manager, and he really likes coal, and I'd never even thought of that. But I started doing the research on it, and I actually bought some on Friday, because it just, I love it. It looks great. So, but anyway, what do the charts say about that stuff?
Just give me a minute. I'm going to mute myself. You guys talk, and let me go open up I didn't have my software open. So just give me a minute.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Mike, what do you think about coal, buddy?
I have not looked at anything other than just precious metals and, of course, the blockchain space. And so me personally, I've disassociated myself with anything in the form of products and things of that nature. If I can't own it outright, I don't mess with it. So I have no clue. So you can educate us on that. But the topic that we gave that I gave this video was the stimulus package. I want to get into that because I think that a lot of people are not really understanding the ramifications of getting that check and what it would do to them in the long term. So will the stimulus help the economy in the short run, in your opinion? Will it help stabilize some things?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think that's well, it might be debatable, but if you're short term, you're talking about like 3 months.
Just April. I just think personally, April is going to be this. April, it'll help in April, but I think there's going to be some type of severe market correction in April that will make that stimulus not of it'll be pennies in a bucket of what's needed.
Yeah. So to be clear, when you say will it help, I'm not saying that it'll bring the economy back to 100% or where it was 30 days ago. No way. But if the economy, let's say, is running at 50% of where it was running 30 days ago, then I think the helicopter money, or whatever you want to call it, that'll bring it up to 60% or 65%.
But bring it up to it. So in providing some liquidity for all the corporations, sure, it'll make their balance sheets look a little bit better and help them mitigate some of the losses. But yet a part of the package is the fact that they're supposed to keep employees on the payroll. But if employees are forced to stay in the house because of the quarantine, and most of the jobs you're talking about are probably manufacturers or skill type service workers that can't work remotely. And so how would that actually stimulate, the companies and help them out? And why would they keep payroll going still?
It just gives them free money. I mean, for the huge corporations, it gives them free money. And if you look at a lot of the quote unquote loans or those 4-letter programs that they set up, and now 5-letter programs, a few of them are non-recourse. So, I mean, is that really a loan when you're getting something at 0% interest that you can roll over every 90 days? It's non-recourse. I don't think so. But one thing I'd like to encourage people to think about, I don't think anyone's talking about it. Let's just say that the ban or the quarantine is lifted and Trump comes out and it's Easter and he says, okay, guys, back to work. Let's go. Even if people are able to go outside and there's not all this government control, are they? Like, I know some people will, but are you going to have life just instantly go back to the way it was, call it 2 months ago? I don't think so. So this type of V-shaped recovery, it doesn't matter what the government does as far as stimulus, because consumer behavior has taken a huge shift. And I don't think it'll go back to quote unquote normal for quite some time, especially if you have to deal with the coronavirus in waves. But I just don't see a lot of people spending money. I see a lot fewer people going to restaurants. I see a lot fewer people traveling. I just think people are going to be more cocooned, for lack of a better word, for the next 6 months, regardless of what the government does or corporations going back to business. They might go back to business as usual, but the customers aren't going to go back to business as usual, even if they are getting some sort of MMT from the government. I think a lot of that will go into paying down debt, which decreases the money supply. So I've done a few videos on this, but I think certain high ticket items will most likely go into a kind of a deflationary bust along with asset prices. But I think that food and other things that you use that $1,200 a month for in MMT, the prices of those goods and services will go up. And I hate to beat a dead horse because I've literally talked about it in every video I've done this week, but I think it's so important because people look at inflation as something that's binary. Either we have inflation or deflation. That's it. And if it's inflation, the dollar's going to zero, and housing and assets and bread and healthcare is just going to the moon. But people don't understand that you can have and it's most likely, in fact, that you have a situation where your healthcare costs, your food costs, your rent goes up, but the value of your car plummets, the value of your house plummets, the value of other things goes down a lot. So whenever someone asks me, well, are you bullish or bearish the dollar? I always have to say compared to what? Compared to high-end vehicles, compared to the stock market, compared to the euro, or compared to the things I buy at the grocery store every day.
Yeah. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 phases of stimulus that will be needed. And so this little 2.4 for the Fed to accommodate, I think it's going to be April, May. I'm anticipating, and what I've heard from all the people I've spoken with is that April will be the month where we're going to see a true correction that will cause a extreme panic, because as you tweeted earlier about the REITs, everybody's looking to sell, but there's no buyers and there's none of liquidity. I did the money market accounts. We're setting records with that. So at the current rate, if this current trend happens of every week it doubling of people looking to get out, it'll be $500 billion next week, $500 billion next week, and then $1 trillion the week after that, of which the Federal Reserve will have to then open up some more lending facilities. And so I see they open up 2, I think it was the 26th that came out of nowhere to buy stuff up. So I think that there's going to be much more stimulus needed. And when it comes to the inflation side, I think people will probably recognize the price really in our second or third round of stimulus that will come out when they roll out an official monthly allotment for people, because that first round won't work.
Yeah,
so,
one thing I think is interesting, Mike, and I really need to do the math on myself, but we always talk about the Fed printing money, the Fed just making it rain, helicopter money, MMT, whatever.
Yeah.
But we forget about the way the Fed does create additional money supply. Yeah. So the way they create additional money supply is not by really creating dollars that you use at the grocery store. It's weird. It's like a dollar. It's like a token that you get at Chuck E. Cheese or Dave and Buster's that says $1 on it. It's not really usable other than at Dave and Buster's, and that's a lot like reserves. So the way the Fed creates more reserves, which is a liability on their balance sheet, is by doing what? It's by buying assets and usually treasuries. Okay, well, if they're buying $125 billion a day of treasuries, if you just take that out 365 days for a year, and I understand they're taking weekends off, but remember, they got to peg the yield curve as well. Yeah. So that takes the Fed's balance sheet, or in other words, that means the Fed would have to find $45 trillion worth of assets to buy. Okay, so what's our national debt? 23 trillion. Mm-hmm. So that satisfies the Fed for 6 months. What happens when there's no more collateral? So you could run into this, and I know there's a lot more assets out there that they'll most likely buy. But just as an interesting thought experiment, you could get to this situation where the Fed can't print any more money because there's nothing else to buy.
I think they will create and find new ways to buy things directly from the public.
So do I.
They're going to find a way, because I was watching a press conference yesterday with Jerome Powell, and he was basically admitting that, things are getting out of hand. And the question threw out there was, people say that you have a blank check and that you can whatever. He was avoiding the question, but basically said that, yes, we can accommodate and provide whatever we need to keep this thing going. So once again, it's all about keeping it going. So we're going to witness more of the inventions of them going inside that toolkit to bring out whatever they can to keep this party going. Along the way, destroying and devaluing everybody, every saver, every investor that's doing it the practical way, they're getting screwed to the T.
Yeah. If you're planning on spending your savings on anything you buy on a daily basis. Yeah. If you're planning on spending your savings on some sort of exotic car, then you might do okay. But assuming you're spending your savings on food and shelter, and one thing that's kind of interesting, Mike, I did a video on Friday that I really took some time to think through, because I was trying to give some investment ideas that I'm personally thinking about. Yeah. And for me, just to make things simple, what I'm looking at as far as opportunities to take advantage of what's going on, because whenever there's this huge disaster, there's always an equal amount of opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get down to the basics, and I'm thinking, okay, all of this excess malinvestment and debt and everything that we've been dealing with over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the money printing, I'm assuming that's going to start going away, and we're going to go the other way. So what becomes really important, it's definitely not things like Facebook or Tesla. And I'm not saying that those companies go out of business. I'm just saying that their stock price most likely goes down because people start to reassess what's more important in this new type of economy. And I think it just boils down to the basics. That's food, energy, and shelter. And notice I said shelter. And I did this in my video. I didn't say real estate. I didn't say housing. I said shelter, because I think we're moving into this phase where people are going to be much more concerned with just having a roof over their head, whether it's a very simple apartment or a very simple house. And any type of housing or real estate that isn't just shelter is going to be excess, and the price will most likely come down. So if you have a house, let's say that's on 10 acres, well, that's in excess of just shelter. The value of the additional 10 acres will most likely start to drop. If you have a condo in Manhattan that's $10 million because it's got everything imported from Italy and marble and all these things, okay, well, that's most likely going to come down in value because it's in excess of just shelter. But if you look at maybe an apartment building that's just very straightforward, just nothing fancy, cheap price, clean, something like a Best Western motel, nothing fancy, but $60-$70, but it's going to be clean, then I'm not saying that's going to go up in value, but I think that's definitely going to maintain your purchasing power, or hopefully maintain your purchasing power. It most likely will a lot more than buying stock in Tesla. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah. I encourage people to take a look at the periodic table and find out ways to get tangible stuff in your possession. Right. My personal opinion is that as the system begins to lock up, as everyone races to the exit, they're going to end up shutting people in, which means that you won't be able to get your last little bit of crumbs out of your accounts, and you won't be able to set off and liquidate it to get back any type of cash. At the same time, by August, I think they're going to have some type of thing saying cash is now a major contaminant and a threat. So we're going to have to quarantine cash and all that stuff. So
right,
not only that, dangerous.
Yeah, not only that, one thing I'd like to throw out is, how do we know? And I think this is, I'm not going to say it's probable, but I'm going to give it in the 10 to 20, maybe 30% range, that moving forward, especially over the next 2 years, we not only will be quarantining people that are coming into the United States. So every single flight that comes in from anywhere, those people are quarantined for 14 days. If you're an American that's going to anywhere, I don't care, you're going to be quarantined for at least a week or 14 days. And I also think we could see in the United States, if there's states that are hit extremely hard, like in New York or California, and they're having a continual process or a problem, let's say going into the fall, a state like Wyoming or Montana, they could potentially quarantine any flights coming in. Not that they won't allow the flight, but those people coming in from California will have to be quarantined for a week or 2 weeks before they're let go. So, I mean, so let's think this through. So not only can you basically not travel without being quarantined, but then they ban cash because of course, safety. And now they've got a digital United States coin then that they're forcing you to use, that they can track anywhere. Yeah. And they're making it extremely difficult, right or wrong, for you to travel, and more so leave the United States.
Yeah, you're not leaving the United States. So let Travis pull up articles. But just yesterday, I talked about an article where the Mexican government, the Mexican president, is saying that we don't want Americans coming through now. So it looks like that wall is built in time to make sure that Americans can't flee to Mexico, as some are.
Like Ron Paul said. Ron Paul said that, like, whenever Trump, The second Trump came out with this whole let's build the wall thing, I remember specifically, like it was yesterday, Ron Paul said, usually when governments build walls, they're not to keep people out, they're to keep people in. I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah. All right, Trader Steph, I saw you had something you want to throw up on there.
Yeah, let me
we
throw
can
the
rant
screen
forever,
up.
but what you go ahead and put your thing up there, and I'll put your screen up there.
All right. Let me just track back here a little bit. Just mention one thing. When I was talking about the oregano oil, for anyone out there that's curious, you realize that the fast food industry and part of the cattle industry has done what? They're beginning to use oregano oil rather than the antibiotics, because the antibiotics eventually create things like superbugs, okay? But when things that occur naturally in nature are used versus something that's manipulated for a purpose to think that you can control nature, things like oregano oil and garlic are extremely effective, and it doesn't affect the end user who may eat that animal meat. So go ahead and Google fast food oregano oil versus antibiotics, and you'll get the information. Okay, with that note, this bill, it should come up. I don't know why it's not showing right now.
I see it. Yeah, the chart for that's Vector's ETF.
Yeah, but it's not active. In other words, you're not seeing what I got in front of it. All right, there we go. Let's see if this other screen pops up. It's actually choosing just one window.
Yeah,
to
pull up a
show.
chart. Coal's actually the ETF I bought. KOL.
Hang on, let me show you.
Gonna get some free advice here from.
All right, there it is. See, yeah, what it does here, it doesn't like actually share your screen. It forces you to choose a window, which is interesting. So this act, it's actually technically it's not a stimulus bill. We can attach any semantics we want to it. In the end, it may provide stimulus, but it's not intended to be like a stimulus bill that we had in 2008. This is a little bit different, but it's called the CARES Act. It's a coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security. So it includes some brand of stimulus, but that's not the intent. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All right, so let me grab that chart for you, George.
So it's not intended to stimulate, but it's intended to paper over and plaster over to keep things afloat while it crumbles.
You got it.
It's no rebooting the economy. It's no. You can't instill confidence into the cash cows of our economy, which happens to be the consumers. So it's one of the things where it's doomed to fail. Just no matter how fast and how much. And so my personal opinion is, I believe this is sad to say, but I believe the government literally wants these things to run its course so that it'll give them time to set up their infrastructure for life beyond and the next system. So I think that because already talking about now, they're still talking about testing and ventilators. They're shutting down all manufacturers and telling GM to set up for ventilators. But that just gives people a chance to stay alive a little bit longer. It doesn't help them overall, apart from giving them time to recover if they do. So the vaccine's coming next year, remember? So between now and next year, when the vaccine comes, when this thing runs its course the way that they want it to run, we're gonna have a new economy by summertime anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, low blood pressure, says George. It's moving here. George, any good deals on farms in Colombia? Yeah, you can get some really, really great deals. And what's awesome about Colombia is most of you probably know what it's well known for. But the reason, and that's old, that's not really known for that anymore. But why it was well known for that back in the Pablo Escobar days, because stuff grows here really, really well. Mike knows that, how good the food is here.
Yeah,
they just grow anything from blueberries, bananas, lettuce, you name it. So yeah, you definitely can. Low blood pressure, that's for sure. And that's a good arbitrage play here too, because wages are so low. You buy a farm here, grow, let's say blueberries, and you sell it at a national market. So you're still getting the national price for blueberries, but your upfront cost and then your recurring costs to grow those blueberries is a fraction of what it would be elsewhere.
So what I got up here is the price of coal
cool.
Over the past 10 years. So coal is blood in the streets right now.
Yeah.
Okay. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily time to buy, in my opinion. Bottom colors and top colors tend to be cotton pickers. what you want is a sweet spot, because why sweat the bullets, if that makes sense? So if I bring up, hey, it's not letting me bring it up. Here we go. So this chart here is actually, there's kind of like a delay between your screen.
What's the ticker on that?
And my browser won't even show it. So I'm going to delete the two other things. There's kind of like just a connection problem here, because I want to be able to see on my other monitor what you're seeing on your screen, which I have here on another monitor. Does that make sense? I got multiple monitors.
Yeah, we're seeing the ETF Trust Coal ETF.
That's KOL. Now that's not.
Yeah, that's
coal,
what I bought.
But the chart looks almost identical to the commodity coal. Right, basically it is. I could draw the same lines and the same rules apply. So what this ETF is, it's a basket of miners that do coal.
Yeah.
And it's tracking their value.
Yep.
And we're at all-time lows almost. The last time was back in 2016, right around when Trump got elected. When Trump got elected, you can see where you got the bump in the price in those companies that mine coal.
Yeah, because he was pro-coal, right?
Yeah, and it ran up until about the second half of 2018, and then things began to roll over. Now, what's important about that chart is right around in 2018, it took out the 50-day exponential moving average. And what you're looking at here is a monthly chart. So just keep in mind, depending on the time frame you're looking at, a monthly chart, things move a lot slower because it's a monthly. If I go to a 1 minute, things are changing by the minute. So it would take a while for us to get back up through that 50. So
that's the green line stuff?
The blue one.
The blue one. Okay.
Let me get rid of this other window.
I think it was probably blue. The one I think it's the only line on there which was green or blue.
Yeah. Probably just my monitor.
Okay, you can see it now, I think. It's not duplicating on my end. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stop the screen share for a minute here.
Okay. All right. So for those that are watching,
the option and come back with it when we have a good connection with it.
Okay. Feel free to ask some questions if you guys have anything you want to answer. So I see a lot of crypto talk.
Oh, that's another thing. Just so the crypto guys or gals know, in speaking to that fund manager, that Wall Street guy, he was not only bullish coal, but he was also very bullish Bitcoin and very bullish gold. So
I think right now, in comparison to the currencies so I got an article here about every central bank is cutting, every central bank, every government is stimulating. So monetary and fiscal policy is colliding right now to where I would imagine anything that has monetary properties will be very bullish in this current environment because it's just going to be reflected in the actual, devaluation of the currency. So
and also, Mike, look at a chart of 2008 for gold, and I'm sure you have, but you see it just goes up and down. And I heard a hedge fund guy the other day say it was like a kite in a storm. And I think that's a good way to look at it. But when the storm kind of settles a little bit, and the only thing that you have left is the Fed's balance sheet at 10 or 15 trillion or more, then everyone says, okay, the collateral issues are over. The liquidity issues are over. Oh my gosh, look at the Fed's balance sheet. Buy gold. How can I buy it at any price quick?
So George, this is the Colombian peso. So it is 6.5 million Colombian pesos for an ounce of gold right now. So I go through this chart often just to show people right now, apart from it being priced in Federal Reserve notes, every other country is already running to it. That's why there's having supply issues right now. And another thing that I think that all the bullion dealers I know in contact with, they're short supply, 2 or 3 weeks supposed to be their next shipment coming in. And between now and then, I think if we have martial law, they're gonna ban logistical things that are not essential. And I don't think gold and silver is essential as far as being for travel's sake. Because I don't think the government, Uncle Sam and the Fed really wants to restock shelves in bullion stores and online stores. So
I didn't even think about that. That's a great
opinion is that whatever we were able to get last week or the week before might be the last we might see for quite some time. That's my personal opinion. So.
Yeah. That's a great point.
But pick a country and you can see where it's there. Let me see here. What's every country except the dollar is let me see here.
All-time high.
at all-time high.
I can't even imagine what it is against the Aussie dollar. That Aussie dollar just took a beating the other day, just down like 20%.
So Australian dollar right now, it's $2,600 for an ounce. But only one of the things that's different is that gold is peaking in every currency, but silver is lagging behind in every currency. Like silver
is the only thing that scares me about that, Mike. Go back to that last chart, and obviously Steph would know this 1,000 times more than I would. But whenever you get a blow off top in something, it looks a lot like the chart right there. Like, remember the blow off top in Bitcoin? And I'm not saying that long term over the next 2-3 years that gold's not going to go to the moon. I completely believe that. But it seemed, just looking at that chart, that you could have kind of a strong pullback there before you continue to go up. But again, that's just denominated in Aussie dollars. Maybe
think about this. Do the inverse of that same graph in terms of the currency losing purchasing power. And even if it does drop a little bit, you're still in money itself. Like, if we're looking at money, so the number to that money doesn't really matter, because you can actually have that physical coin in your hand and go anywhere on the planet and pick up where you left off at, and always be in that same monetary, fiscal, financial status area. So like, if this does correct, that's great. But the problem is you still won't be able to get any. So
well, I bought that as well, as far as gold on Thursday or Friday, just because for a certain percentage of my portfolio, whenever I add to it, whenever I get an extra X amount of money, I just divide it up, just 10% insurance, 10% speculation, and 80% investments. And so that 10% that goes into gold, I just literally buy it at almost any price. Sometimes I'll say, well, do I look like it's going to have a pullback here? I try to get cute. But generally, it's just, let's just pull the trigger, because it's just your insurance policy, really.
Yeah. So Henry Brown says $1,200 in California, get your gas and chip money.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. So watch this. This stimulus check, based upon the family size, I think it's family of 4 could be what, $3,400, $3,600. How would you? So George, question to you, Steph. You feel free to answer as well. How would you break that down? Like, how would you? You get a deposit in your check account. Let it sit there, do nothing, ignore it, put it to use right away, because it's what? What are your thoughts?
Well, usually I'd say just pay off high interest credit card debt. But right now, I don't know, because they might give you.
They go follow all that. So mortgages, credit card, as you mentioned earlier. My personal opinion is, right now, I think this is the last hurrah. Like, take that currency and put it to work for you. If not, ain't no point in paying off debts, because all that's about to go under anyway, in my opinion. So
yeah. And again, I'm not saying that you don't buy gold or silver. I'm just talking about, what do you do with 100% of it, right?
Yeah. Divvy it up and stuff.
I don't know. Maybe you do 50% gold or silver, whichever you prefer. Maybe both, and then maybe 50 on the high end. But what's interesting, Mike, is I retired a long time ago, and anyway, long story short, I was talking to my sister the other day, and this was call it 6 months ago or whatever, and I forgot how it came up, but it came up that I was making a payment to my student loan. Right. And she said, what? She goes, why on earth have you not paid off your student loan? She goes, what, are you crazy? And I said, no, actually, I'm not. I got it at it's like 2% interest. And I said, Lise, I'll bet you probably there's back then I said like a 20 or 30% possibility that coming in 2021 or 2020, the next president, they're going to wipe out the student loan debt. Why would I want to pay it? Like, that doesn't even make sense. I'm going to sit here, keep it on my balance sheet in case it gets wiped out. Yeah. And I didn't know that this was coming as far as the virus, but now I think it's gone from 20 to 30% up to 70 or 80%.
So put that same debt in all types of categories.
I told you so right there.
All right, I got that chart up. If you guys want, there you go. Just a quick note on coal, to answer your question. If I'm, they look similar, the commodity versus the KOL ETF. I wouldn't touch it until that trend line over top was taken out with conviction, and I'll follow through and take out the 50. And then you lay on a core position. If you like catching falling knives and you're a gambler and you think you're a bottom picker, go ahead, throw in some money. People get lucky. Some people don't, right?
Yeah, I already did.
So it's all a matter of, it's risk management.
Right.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's throwing off a 17% dividend.
Yeah. Because if you take out that 50,
which is the 50 step? The 50 is the blue. Oh, there you go. Okay, got it.
It's the blue line. If you take out this trend line, which goes back a ways, if you take that out with conviction on volume, and then take out that 50, you definitely have a run to at least 13 and a half. And then there's not much. Then you got 14 and a half. Then you got 15 and a half, all the way up to 18. So that would be roughly an $8 run that you potentially have to go up to that last high that took place back in 2018.
Got it.
So, instead of risking a small amount of capital, maybe you just want to put a small position down here.
I did. Yeah, I never go
right?
all in.
And
I
then
was just going to scale.
Then you could layer on additional positions if and when it takes out that overhead resistance.
Yeah.
The same thing
I always, other than gold, that's what I always do.
Right.
I just kind of scale into it. Yeah.
So
the same line of thinking if you're scaling CDs, that's how you do it. And you can do it on a 1 minute on scalping charts. I think I heard in the background someone wanted to see a Bitcoin chart.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, here it
is.
And I threw it up a few weeks ago. We talked about
looks
it.
like you spent some time on this Bitcoin chart.
No, it's the same one. It hasn't changed. Same lines. I did some interviews right around here, and we had a guest recently here with you. I think it was Bitcoin Ben, and there just comes certain points just when you get a little run, everyone's like screaming, buy here, last chance, buy here, last chance. Look, guys, I've been hearing this since way back here. And that's why that 12K number is so important. You got to take out that overhead stuff. And then anyone who went along with the siren call, you just got whacked and lost everything that you put in it, because now it's below the price that you entered when you saw this little run. This was a rising wedge in this channel. It broke down. I did an interview 2.5 weeks ago, and I said it's gone back down to the bucket that was back here. It went down back to the bucket. So whether this is the bottom or not, I don't know. I can't tell you, but the indicators tell me right now it's still in a bear market. It hasn't taken out the trend line drawn all the way down from 2017. It hasn't taken out the 12K from the double cat bounce, and we keep putting in lower highs. So until that trend changes, then you're good to go. I see waiting for that sweet spot. Wait for that 12K to be taken out with conviction. Then you can put something on. If you want to sweat bullets and risk now, I mean, hey, that's your choice. It's a speculative asset. It's not money, man. It's a speculative asset, and it ain't going to happen in our lifetime. It ain't going to happen in our lifetime. My opinion. Anybody want to see gold?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Here's gold on the weekly. It's still in a bull market.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to go back.
It hit the 50, didn't it?
I remember we're on the weekly chart here. All right. Let's go back to the low in 2015. So right back here in hindsight, once it came up here, then came back down, and once it pivoted here and began to run up, that's the confirmation. You got a second point with a higher low. So that's where the primary bull market started. You have a primary bull market and a secular bull market. The primary is when you hit a low and smart money starts accumulating. A secular bull is when you take out a certain technical point, and then big money, Momo money starts flowing into the asset because it sees the secular bull reasserting itself. So the primary bull was primarily, I'm using both of them at the same time, when that 1380 was taken out, because that 1380 was a Fibonacci number. And I don't want to move the chart around too much because I'll lose you guys, but right around here, it's the first level that we came back up and dead cat bounced to, think about Bitcoin, and hit it, and we couldn't get through it, and we couldn't get through the 50. And then we had that horizontal lateral. That once that 1380 was taken out, we were off to the races. So we're, number one, we are still in a primary bull market. Number two, the uptrend has not been violated. We are still putting in higher highs and higher lows. despite the volatility over 2 weeks. 4, before the volatility came in, I called the 1620 to 1697. It happened quick. It's water under the bridge. And I said that there would be chop after that. Now, how volatile that chop would be, there ain't nobody could have told you it would have been this volatile, right? But basically, that's what happened. So if I zoom in and we look at this, we briefly violated this secondary up channel that got started back in around June 2019. But it came right back up above it. It never violated the 50. It's a good chart. There's nothing bearish about this chart whatsoever. There's just a lot of whiners about intraday volatility. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's retaining your capital and your purchasing power. Any other questions? Silver.
Yes.
Mike,
Silver got killed.
I gotta get to another interview, buddy.
Okay. So appreciate you, my friend. Be safe down there.
Okay, thanks, guys, and thank you, Steph. I really appreciate you going through those charts. That's really, really awesome information.
You're welcome, George. Thank you. Silver got killed. There ain't no slicing and dicing it, but it pivoted back up and got back above that 13.5 roughly low. And I've been saying for years now, 2149. There ain't going to be no fireworks until 2149, but that doesn't mean anything below 2149 is not a good place to be stacking if you're a stacker, right?
Mm-hmm. If at this current point, if you can get your hands on it,
right? It's too late now, so that's the point. We've been banging the table, but hindsight's 2020 for a lot of folks, right?
Yeah.
But the point was, it's extremely undervalued because now it's so far below the cost of production for most mines. It's really bad for them. They don't even want to let the silver go. They're just holding on to it. There's so many issues. Yeah, there's so many issues here, but. Look, nothing is going to happen now until now we have a new trend line up there from that 2113 high in 2016. It never made it to the 2149. Got close. Now we got the secondary high that didn't go any higher. So this trend line needs to be taken out. And then 2149. Yeah, then there's fireworks. But now if you're playing the paper, I can't give out price points because I have a fiduciary responsibility. I came from the banking industry. But look, anybody that looks at the fundamentals, that's where the fundamentals come in. It's a screaming buy. But your risk management, what your goals are and how you're doing this, that's totally your party, not mine. Yeah. But those are the price points.
Yeah. So when it comes to all the electronic stuff, at this point, I think that I got an echo. It's becoming riskier than ever, especially as everyone's looking to exit out now. So to run in, to play around with the chance of making some profit off of this, to me, it's just one of the things you have to know what you're doing and get information from people you trust. And because if you can't get it to physical right now, that would be my biggest concern is that if I can't own it, if I don't hold it, I don't own it. And I would question not if I can get it out if I need to, if it's in this form. So that's just my 2 cents stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, with that being the case, we are going hour 13. Let's get ready to dial it back. As always, anybody want to find out more of what you do, they can look up you Trader Steph on Twitter and connect with you there and get more chart analysis or whatnot. So I guess everybody, it's been great hanging out. And one thing I want to make sure I bring everyone's attention to is that I'm looking to get the community connected via social networking over at rethinkingthedollar.com. So I appreciate those that have already signed up to become members. But the goal is to have you guys post articles, share whatever's happening in your neck of the woods via the social feed so everybody can connect there. So I'm about to head over there now. So for those that are interested, go to rethinkingthedollar.com, look in the menu section, register, join us, and we can continue to chat over there and go from there. So, Steph, anything you want to leave us with before we dial off?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mike, for having me. And everybody, be careful out there. Do your thing. Social distancing. Keep your hands clean. Keep your hands out of your eyeballs and your mouth and whatnot. And like I said earlier, I think this is the stepping stone for the global currency reset. Mm-hmm. So, it's coming.
I agree.
How long it's going to take for us to get to that point when things actually are triggered? And, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But we're definitely in the beginning here.
Yeah, I do agree. Well, everybody, be blessed, be safe, enjoy the rest of your day. And other than that, I'll see you guys in the chat over rethinkingdollar.com. So see you guys there. Peace.